We're ready. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Good morning, Dr. Bustles.
Here.
Mr. Brennan.
Present.
Mayor Rickaman.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Yes, sir. So we wanted to start out the legislative committee meeting with, following our agenda, of course, we have a presentation of the automated traffic safety cameras by Mrs. Jessica Shand. So we'll start out with you.
Great, can we come up here?
Yes,
Okay,
please. And
fantastic.
speak in the mic because we are live. People
Let's
need
make
to
sure I get this straight.
hear it.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Shand, and I'm actually with the Southern Group, which is a government relations company here in Columbia. And today I am here speaking to you on behalf of Citizens for Safe Streets. Citizens for Safe Streets is a fantastic nonprofit organization with a mission to save lives of South Carolinians using automated road safety technology. So ARST is the acronym for that. And this has been proven to reduce traffic deaths across the nation. CFSS, which is Citizens for Safe Streets, we advocate legalized data-driven solutions, specifically the ARST, and hopefully decrease accidents, supplement law enforcement resources, and ultimately to save lives. I'm happy to be here today, and I'm so thankful for the mayor and for his support and the city's support of this very important issue. And I'll tell you a story just to get started, and then I'll tell you some background as well as our goals for this coming year. I was taking my children to school just a week or so ago, and we're going through a fairly busy intersection coming up to it, and it's just the morning, and thankfully I was the first one to stop at that red light. And right before the light changed, I had some sort of distraction. Those of you with children will know how that goes when you have young ones in the back. And I turned around for just a brief moment, and the light had already turned green for me to go forward. But I paused because of that distraction. And thankfully I did, because as I did, this pickup truck came barreling through. And had I continued to go as I normally would have, I would have been in a terrible accident. And by the grace of God, my life was saved and my children's as well. But I know that many of you can relate to that type of situation. You can understand how important it is to have any type of technology that we have available to us here in South Carolina to keep our citizens, our families, ourselves safe. So we've been grateful to partner with the mayor. The mayor has reached out for us to 12 different mayors in South Carolina, just telling of his support about our organization, what we are trying to do, how we are trying to do it, and have had some great support from other mayors as well. So we have met with them and have been very thankful for that. I'd love to give you some background and some facts, of course, about Citizens for Safe Streets. So in the early 2000s, the automatic camera systems for traffic enforcement began gaining popularity. And so recognizing the potential, General Assembly passed legislation in 2007, which would allow the use of ARST. However, in 2011, the legislation was amended, requiring all traffic violations to be personally ticketed by an officer who observed the actual offense. Changes limited our ability to fully leverage life-saving technologies such as ARST. South Carolina and Mississippi are the only two states in the Southeast that actually ban camera use. South Carolina ranks #1 for deaths per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and Mississippi ranks #2, if that tells you anything at all. South Carolina ranks #2 for deaths per 100,000 population, and Mississippi ranks #1. Pretty telling facts there. More than 6,000 crashes between motorists and vulnerable road users in South Carolina resulted in 800 deaths between 2018 and 2021. In 2022, South Carolina ranked 5th in pedestrian fatality rates per 100,000 population, and 3 South Carolina metro areas were named among the top 20 most dangerous areas for pedestrians in the entire nation. Federal statistics show that South Carolina traffic fatalities, reached a 16-year high in 2021. And Department of Public Safety and Department of Transportation Strategic Highway Plan forecasts this rate to grow 3% or so between now and 2026. So there's very good technology available for us. There are companies that are working hard to make sure that this technology makes sense for all cities, and they are working to be able to use this technology here in South Carolina. We have been working with some of those companies. One of the companies is actually Vitronic, and they have worked very hard. And some of the technologies have shifted as well, and I think that's an important thing to note. When legislation was amended back in 2011, there were some concerns from legislators about privacy issues, just so that you are aware of that. Because at the time, the cameras actually took a photograph of who was in the car, who the actual violator was. And technology has come a long way since 2011. I know all of you see that in the phones that we use every day and the technology that we use. It's improved so much. And now all the technology does is take a picture of the license plate. So I think that we have moved past that personal invasion, and we just see the license plate, and the picture of the license plate identifies the owner, and then the owner would receive the violation from there. Does that make sense? So we've come a long way with the technology.
Well, that's the issue.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think, at the end of the day, where we were in 2011, where we are in 2024 is totally different. I think the conversation of folks worried about invasion of privacy and this and that, there's cameras on every street corner that record so that you see who's in the car. License plate readers, everything else, every parking garage, every federal building, everything has cameras on it, Ring cameras in every neighborhood. I think that issue is really out the table. I think this is really about safety. And I think that's what we got to focus on, and having the tools and the technology. We've already proven that tools and technology make a difference. And in law enforcement, the average officer spends an hour and a half on an accident. Well, think about if we could have them focused on a crime that didn't have to happen, an accident that didn't have to happen, puts that time back into the street where our officers are taking care of our residents where it's most needed. So I think for us, we've got to go to legislators and say, guys, y'all got to quit living in the past. You got to start going to focus. We've proven with every trial and the big trial in Hampton County, everything you do is tracked. So let's just stop that you're not being followed and watched, and your car doesn't tell everybody what you're doing. I think the reality is that we want to be able to get this done at red light. You think about workforce sites where you've got officers tied up there protecting those, where speed cameras work. It's proven. 48 states can't be wrong. Europe and other countries have had it for years. If you get a 5x7 with your smiling face, guess what? You're guilty. I think the problem with the ownership piece is that the ticket goes to the driver. It should go to the driver, not the vehicle.
Yeah,
And I think that's.
can you speak to that,
that's
Ms. Shan? I mean, what are other states doing? Because that's the biggest pushback I hear, is making the responsible party and not, the license plate, whoever that
Just
belongs to.
part of it.
It is just part of it. And as far as I know, I think that is a little bit of a hang-up, because it can only photograph, and part of that is done so that we don't see the people, that we don't have that invasion of privacy, so we don't see who's actually driving the vehicle. So the license plate is then photographed, and then the person that is driving the car is able to deal with
Don't they do that in
that.
Georgia? I mean, I've seen a friend send me a picture of a red light, and you could see him driving the vehicle.
Oh,
Do
I
that,
got a
okay.
2x3 somewhere from me where I ran
Yeah.
a red light in another city by
So
mistake.
have other states quit doing that? Taking pictures of who is actually
I had a
driving?
$200 ticket in Maryland.
I don't think all of them have. I think there's the ability to do that, and I think in South Carolina, the idea has been that we needed to avoid having those pictures because of the pushback in the legislature. And so we've tried to figure out a way to be able to get around that somehow.
Does that still exist? Like, what has your conversations been with the legislature with this? I think the strongest tool that you have is this citizen-led group, right? It's not just electeds, but folks that have actual personal stories. What's the continued pushback?
It is just that I've said, that invasion of privacy, and that the government is already trying to take away so many of our rights, our privacy, and we don't want to add something else to that. It's not fair to the
Same
citizens.
legislators who use the cameras to try to get their clients off cases.
Indeed. Indeed.
I think this is really about not only the citizens group, but us, but I hope that we, as a council, could support this effort. both financially and taking the time to go testimony and talk to folks and really make an effort, because I do think it'd be a tool, and I'm not gonna speak for you, Chief, but I think it'd be a great tool for you guys to have. Especially you think about school zones. I mean, I think about Rosewood Drive. If you know you have those speed cameras there all the time, guess what? People aren't gonna drive, they're gonna slow down every time.
Absolutely.
It works in other cities, and then you start adding the red light, and we know the major intersections that constantly have it. I'm thinking of, Kilburn and Divine. I mean, you take your life in your hands there.
So have you identified any potential champions? You don't have to say who, but is there some interest?
Yes, there is some
Okay.
interest. It's limited, but there is someone who is willing to put a bill forward. There is some language that has been written, which is great. We have talked to several people that would support this. We just have a couple of voices that are very strong in opposition. And so I think having a group like the City of Columbia, the council, to say we are very much in support, and the chief being able to say the same would go a long, long way at this
I
point.
think we're gonna have several other cities and mayors. We've got a mayor's meeting coming up, and I will tell you that the four that I've talked to, which are the big four, are all in favor of this.
So is
They
it
have
something
the
we can
same
do, like a
challenges we-
coordinated resolution or something? Okay.
I think so.
Exactly.
Is the plan, is the expectation for it to be managed at the state level?
That's a great question.
I think it has to be, sir. Because they're taking away the home rule opportunity because it happened, and that's what he's going to
Preemption,
refer to 2011.
yeah.
It's the time that changed, it's also the fact that
Right.
the state law says that you cannot do this without the state.
Absolutely. And this is proven technology. I mean, I think that, looking at my notes, safety cameras can be a proven safety countermeasure, reducing behavior, but also crashes up to 54%.
Well,
This
here's
is
what I
tremendous.
don't want to happen is for our state legislatures to look at it as a money grab by local, because
Right.
that's why 2011 happened, right?
It is indeed.
So how does the citizen-driven groups get around that?
So what we have said and proposed is that in the language of the bill, that there would be something that says that the monies can only go to highway repairs, education initiatives, something of that nature. That it has to be very specifically.
Later pick up.
Beautification.
How fun would that be?
Yeah.
That'd be wonderful. Yes, absolutely. So we feel like that has to be in the
Don't think
bill.
you're fine, we'll put you in an orange suit and let you pick up out there too.
I like that too. I like that too.
Well, just as a local, I mean, locally, I think that's very important.
I do
don't
too.
think you have legs if you got to make it a state initiative, state-run, It can
Absolutely.
come from the state, funds stay at the state, and they can come down as grants in some form or fashion.
I agree with you 100%. And that's one reason the City of Citizens for Safe Streets actually moved to Columbia. This was an organization that was started in Spartanburg, but we realized that we needed to have a home here in Columbia so that we could reach statewide. And with the connections with the mayors that we've received, I feel like we're going to be able to build that up so that it does come from the state. I think that's very important.
So what is your goal for this legislative session?
To be able to pass legislation that would allow the use of automated road safety technology. 100%. And we've discussed a pilot here in Columbia. I mean, you guys have been generous enough to offer that Columbia would be willing to host a pilot session to see how it goes. I think that would be a great starting point for us. And then the other mayors will probably jump on and want to do the same once they see you as a leader doing this.
What's stopping us from doing a pilot?
Gotta get.
I mean, it's just internal data.
Well, I mean, technically, we've done an internal pilot. The problem is that you gotta have the state permission to do it.
Yeah. It's
the-
preemption, they can't do
It is banned right now to use
Yeah.
those cameras. So
So DOT can't put out whatever technology they use to understand how many people run lights and just tell us.
You think
You would think.
that would be the logical way to do it.
Okay.
But so far, that hasn't been. So I would say, us petitioning to try to get a pilot. And I think you do it two ways. I think you do school zone or work, three ways really, school zone, work zone.
And religious,
Yeah.
church, yeah.
Yep, exactly right. Exactly right. And we hope to be a grassroots effort that really is able to get the citizens involved, let the citizens talk to legislators so that they hear these voices and that hopefully it becomes a big enough issue that we have to pass this legislation this year. So that's what our goal is, majority
When you come to
of our goal.
Rosewood Elementary, there will be a lot of parents that will get behind this effort and
Agreed.
great voices.
I think in every school,
We can-
absolutely.
Yeah, all over this city.
The schools are,
Yeah.
yes, they're crying for this. So would love to be able to use the technology in any way we can to be able to make this work. Any other questions that you have for me?
Next steps.
Yeah, I think more a question for him. No, thank you.
Yes.
I mean, I think the next steps for us is that, you know, we bring to council an option to opt in. I think, you know, look, you gotta lobby, you gotta chip in some money. These other cities and citizens are doing it. Figure out what that is that we're willing to put into that effort. And then I think we go ahead and get a resolution from us that we can share to other municipalities, and then let's have a group so we can say, here it is, 1, 2, and 3.
And then for the pilot, offer to be the pilot, maybe team with school districts as well, as part of the pilot project. Focus on school zones, like you said, work zones.
I'd love to be able to get a highly visible intersection that we know we've had a series of accidents at, and a couple school zones
Mhm.
to show the effect.
Yeah.
'Cause I think we'll be surprised, you know, and on the heels of, you know, this unfortunate pedestrian getting killed on Rosewood, somebody, I mean, at close to 100 miles an hour, we know it's happening.
Mhm. All times of day too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we'll be happy to take those steps with you, whatever we can do. Of course, if you have any more questions, Jean Denman was going to join me today. She's one of the original coordinators of this group and was not able to join, but she has every fact and every statistic that you could ever ask for.
We've spent the last 7 years working on this.
She has. She is a passionate individual, so I'd love to be able to provide any other information if you would like it. Any other questions, I can certainly leave my contact information. Peyton knows how to find me too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shand. We appreciate that. And we want to kind of transition into the lobbyists coming to the table. So you guys can come up to the table.
Moving it out of this committee for a full vote.
We should do that in new business.
That's what I'm doing.
Put that in new business, and then that way we can get it on the next council agenda.
What, new business to introduce a resolution? You want to do it?
I don't think it needs to go to public safety. I think it needs to go straight down.
That's what he's saying, like, bring it
It's
up.
gotta go to the council as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll bring it up.
The resolution is due on October first.
If we can make it work. But I'd like to see it done in October for sure, so that we're way ahead of legislative session.
So we want to start the next section, state legislative priorities for 2025 session, being a little proactive about some of the anticipated bills, and some of the state legislation that's on the watch list, some topics that you all have expressed some interest in seeing us have the lobbyists express our support of some of those things. And then, of course, there'll be other things that will come along as the legislative session continues. And so, with a lot of work from Peyton, putting the presentation together and talking to the committee, we've got Kyle, Michelle, we've got Caroline Delaney, and we've got Damon Jeter, our lobbyists here, to kind of walk us through the council's legislative priorities, some of those that we've already established. And then we'll, of course, we have a watch list and some other things that we'll talk about as we move forward. Trying to be strategic about some of those issues that you all have some passion about and want to see what's going to happen with some of this legislation moving forward in this next 2025 legislative year. So Kyle, I'm going to turn it over to you, and
Long
you can
list.
kind of step
You got
us
tight.
through. You can step us through the watch list,
So
some
for the public,
anticipated bills
This
and
is all
topics.
really about policy stuff. This
Right.
isn't about any type of funding requests or priorities there. This is really about policies that we are very interested in and looking to work with the legislature to change.
Absolutely. So Kyle, you want
We're
to,
gonna go to the watch list first and then the PowerPoint second.
it's all in the PowerPoint.
So we're just gonna go through the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. We always enjoy coming and having these discussions because it gives us good direction And lets us set some strategy also for the next few months for meetings, not just the topic that Ms. Shan was talking about, but other topics that you got, that are important to you.
Right.
So, this is great. Great to be doing it in September. Let's see where we are here. I'm going to be the person who's operating this, although I think someone just advanced it, which is great too. I'll get our names off of there pretty quickly because that's not the slide I want to concentrate on. Okay, so, we're gonna go through these and we're gonna really just listen to you guys. And then and ask us questions and tell us what you're thinking, and then we'll respond and fill you in as much as we can. But I don't want to just sit here and talk about these things because that gets boring pretty quickly. So let's talk about, this dog bites on animal shelter liability and an exemption. What are your thoughts on that? Where's that coming from? Are we having an issue with it? What do you know about it?
It wasn't mine.
I don't even know what it is. What?
This must be something maybe that came up from staff then, and
So
I,
this is a combination list of things that staff has
Right.
watched out there.
Right.
That's been floating out there. So some of these are things that were already introduced by other people, not in any relationship to us. So it's things that we wanted you all to follow based on some staff. And we have staff
Oh, yeah.
here, and they can certainly comment on their thoughts about the importance of some of this legislation and making sure it moves forward. Some of these are things that, like I said, are repeated from previous legislative sessions.
And if I might, on that particular item on dog bites, and I don't know if Teresa wants to weigh in, but that specific item came from some concerns from the city attorney's office.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
The floor is yours.
Let's start with dog bites, let's go.
The current statute exempts law enforcement, so we wanted to add animal shelters to it. Right now, we're treated as any homeowner, animal owner, and we also want to be exempted also.
So like, says, does this take care of our animal shelter employees? What, I'm just kind of trying to figure out.
No, there's a, under the state law, a dog bite is automatic liability. And so that's meant to apply mainly to homeowners or people that, pet owners. And now at a shelter, a dog bite is automatic liability.
For
So
the-
there's no defenses
For the
to
owner
it.
that hasn't claimed their
There's
dog
no
back.
defenses for the city if a
So what she's
Animal
saying
shelter
is if
dog
you're
bites
in a,
someone.
hypothetically, somebody's there looking at a dog and it bites them, we become liable for that dog.
Not that we're saying that's okay, we're just saying sometimes they are defenses to a dog bite or exceptions or
All right,
reasons or causes.
got it.
okay, good, thanks. The second one on the list here is liquor liability and insurance. This is an issue that was hotly debated this last session for all the reasons that I think people in this room understand with the difficulties with restaurants and entertainment venues being able to afford the escalating liability insurance costs if you have a liquor license. And so I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on this issue as we made it through. And I think the only thing we came out with in this legislature was a study committee to try to identify the root causes.
And I'm curious though, a couple things here. Number one, I will say that the big four cities are getting together to have this conversation. We want to go united because it's affecting, all cities, especially cities with tourism, as well. The hospitality industry is a huge part. When they changed in 2014 or whenever they changed the liquor liability requiring anybody open after 5 o'clock to have it, they created this bandwidth that has become a real problem for folks, even if you drop your liquor. I'm concerned, and so are the other cities, is that we're going down a path at some point we're gonna end up with brown bagging because nobody can afford the insurance. I mean, we're seeing people paying not 5, 10, 15. I know one place is paying 20 times what they paid before. just to stay open. And so people, you know, we're talking about jobs, we're talking about taxation, we're talking about all types of things. Second part to this is that there's so much disinformation around why it's where it is. And somewhere, somehow, somebody's got to clarify. I've heard that this industry, unlike property and casualty, is not regulated by a committee or anything. It's just, I've heard there's only 2 companies that are selling it, and then I've heard other people say, no, there's 12. Well, which is it? You know, what's the driving cost? Obviously, this ties directly into tort reform as well. And, you know, I think there's some conflicts at the State House with this. I'm gonna be quite frank. I mean, when we're hearing from people saying, well, you don't need to mess with our income, what are you talking about? You're messing with other people's income. I mean, this is a real issue that affecting small businesses across this state. So I do think we need to apply pressure. I think councils across the state, you know, restaurant industry, what this really begs for though, in the overall discussion is maybe it's time that we change the way our licensing works and that we actually reform everything in a sense so it's practical to today. I mean, we got outdated liquor laws. And, you know, that's a much bigger discussion, but this is hitting everyone that I've heard from is a small business.
Well, and it's another hurdle for a small business to open up in our hospitality districts. That's the most concerning as well.
Well, it's
You know?
hurting economic development too, because when people see what they're having to pay,
They're not gonna come, yeah.
we've had 2 restaurant groups that we've been working hard to get here, who are 2 reasons. One, you know, they're tired of seeing people being taken to court. They think that's, well, why are you going after every business? That doesn't make sense to us, you know, go after the people who are problems. Secondly, they see this as a major hurdle. And they're talking about making $1 million investments, and they're having to pay these huge premiums that they don't have to pay anywhere else. So they can go to Charlotte, they can go to Atlanta, Nashville, any other state around us. Raleigh, I mean, look, Raleigh's at 12% growth. Restaurants going left and right downtown. People are skipping over this, and this has become another one of those checkpoints. So, you know, this has some real repercussions if we don't address it.
So so there was a bunch of things that were introduced, but was it some of the arguments that Mayor presented? Why was there a roadblock to? Because it's been covered extensively in the media how it's affected businesses.
Right, I will say that the Senate at least made an attempt to try to solve the issue. I think time just ran out on us, but they had several meetings, long meetings throughout the session, and they seemed to be interested in trying to resolve it.
And I think that, go ahead.
The study committee that was formed to look into this issue is meeting this week. So they're gonna start trying to dive in to try to find some kind of consensus, I think, and.
But at the end of the day, the hurdle's the House. So.
Yeah, and the Senate can be a hurdle too. So I think these are thorny issues from the standpoint of how many people's interests are involved. And so there are a lot of people's interests that are involved. So
the trickle down effect though is so large that it's tough to swallow the fact that we're still debating this.
And I think keeping the drumbeat up and having meetings like this and keeping the drumbeat up and saying this is still a big issue. This has not gone away. It's only getting worse. I think it'll be interesting to see when we get into 2025 and as the study committee goes forward, how many restaurants have closed, because a lot of restaurants have closed, not just in Columbia area, but also in Greenville and Charleston and.
Well, you
North
add
County,
all
Myrtle
the other
Beach.
costs that have gone up and the cost today to employ insurance, you know, everything that goes on, and then you add this on top of it, which is a requirement even for the people who don't serve liquor.
Yeah, it definitely is an issue that needs to have continued pressure on it to get something more meaningful to address it. Okay,
And that meeting's Thursday, at 10.
AM.
study
Hopefully
committee
y'all can.
Yeah, can
give some
y'all-
Insight.
Yeah.
right now.
And so vaping product regulation is a bill that has been sort of on our list to be concerned about. I would really like to hear you guys' feedback on that.
Well, you know, we testified on it last year along with several other law enforcement agencies, school districts, et cetera. It's a problem. There are a lot of illegal vaping products. And I think there needs to be a clear distinction about what's legal and what's not. You know, when you look at the advertisement and you see what's in these stores, look, I think everybody has, if you want to vape, then you can vape. But what concerns me is the fact that there's no real regulation for all these illegal items that are coming through. And you can go to any of these stores, convenience stores or vape shops, and you can buy 20 products that are illegal. There's no regulation around it. There's no enforcement around it. So we've got to do something at the state level. And you heard the testimony from the school districts and the police department about the significant amount of it being sold to underage folks.
Yeah.
Much bigger problem than alcohol.
I think the number of products that no one is certain of their ingredients and who's producing them in other countries is the most alarming thing. That
Well, and
moved
also
the
that was
bill.
very alarming is some of the testimony that's happened on the national level where you're seeing these brought in through smugglers and stuff. So these are drug dealers that are also bringing in vaping products. That tells you that those products, there's no telling what's in it. What are the health effects of that going to be having on individuals? What are they actually inhaling? They don't know. So if ATF and the others are not going to do something about it, we got to do something, and the state's got to give us the ability to do that.
The bill, as you can see on the screen, passed the House in passed the Senate in 2024. I'm sure there will be a push on this again this year because the problem hasn't gotten any better. And we will look for opportunities for you, mayor, and council members to come testify again on this to help push this bill.
Well, I think we make sure that we get our school district folks there as well. They're dealing with it on the front line, but you know, there's a lot of confusion about what's legal and what's not. And, you know, most of the guys or folks that have owned stores that have reached out to me, just help us. We don't know. A salesman comes in, I don't know if it's legal or not. I'm like, well, I can't help you make that decision. But, you know, for them, it's like, just give us the ground rules and we'll build our model around it. And there's others who think they can just sell whatever they sell and it doesn't matter. But I do think there's consequences. I mean, if you think about, if we made them have vaping liability insurance like liquor liability, guarantee somebody would be working hard on this.
Right. Well, then I think that the bill 994 set up a process for registering products at SLED, if I'm not mistaken.
Supposed to.
And then it gave law enforcement the ability to come in and to remove any products that were in a store that were not on the registered list with SLED.
But once again, though, you know, that's requiring our guys to get out of what they do on a day-to-day basis. And I think the other thing that came up in the conversation is we need to have some more authority in the bill that you could have a business license or somebody like that who goes in to do an inspection have the same authority as law enforcement, because we're going to take people off the street who are monitoring our neighborhoods and our businesses to go regulate a business that should be done at the federal and at the state level.
I'm pausing because I'm taking a minute to write down some of these good ideas.
And I just think it's things that as we're talking to our delegation and to other folks over there, we need to make sure that's on our list. God, this is real.
Municipal election changes passed the House and the Senate amended and passed the bill. However, the House never took up the Senate amendments to the bill.
What is the,
This bill is here so we can watch it, to make sure they don't do anything that affects us.
why did they want to get involved with municipal?
Because they wanted,
I think part of it was they were trying to move most municipal elections along with the November timeframe or primary
We do
versus.
that anyway, yeah, okay.
right, we're in this. You're right, keep going.
So just requiring that it's all, okay.
We're trying to quit people having elections in May.
Is that the only component of the bill?
But you remember, this is the bill that we testified, that we were watching, that we testified on, that had an amendment added to it that would have gotten rid of municipal election commissions. So our municipal election commission would have been disbanded, it would have been outlawed, and we would have had to run all of our municipal elections. We would have had to turn over our municipal elections to the Richland County Election Commission. And that's not something that we really wanted to do. So we testified along with Charleston and some other people, and were successful in getting the Senate to take that out of the bill. So the bill's on here because it's something that we watch to make sure that it doesn't have any kind of adverse, something doesn't get added to it like that would have an adverse effect on how we currently run our elections. Property tax exemption for nonprofit housing corporations. This is a bill that needs to pass to address an oversight in a bill that passed in 2020 that allowed developments that are truly serving, that are owned by nonprofits and that are providing affordable housing, which we all need more of, to have a property tax exemption, to try to help it be more economically workable for those properties to continue offering affordable housing
So is this the
rates.
loophole for nonprofits that come in under the flag of 20% are gonna be workforce, and then the 80% are market rate or above to make up for that difference? But they're enjoying the.
Yes, they'll get a full property
Yeah.
tax exemption, and it just,
So they should be taxed, abated on that 20% and not the 80%. Is that the intent of this?
it's exceedingly complicated, so I don't wanna act like I can
think we
recite
need
it
to dig
chapter and
into this
verse.
a little bit deeper, because it's a twofold, it's exactly what you're talking about. And as we know about those 3 units, those 3 apartment complexes that have been sold
Mhm.
to nonprofits
Right.
that aren't attainable housing
Right.
and are using that status to get around the point of sale. So they're getting a better sale to the owner, and then they're rolling in with
Yeah.
that. So, yeah, I do think we need to dig into this.
Yes, nonprofits in more lower income parts of town, for-profit housing developments in lower income parts of town that have rates that are at or near affordable housing rates already, but they're not in compliance with all the requirements of the affordable housing
And I think the
laws.
municipal association, a lot of smaller municipalities brought this up.
Yes,
This summer.
yes, it's been a number of municipalities brought this up, so we will continue to be active on that.
And they're using that status to bypass.
Community development tax credits. Extends the tax credit that currently sunset this year. Before an amendment, it would have increased the total amount of credits that could be claimed in a calendar year. The amendment removed that provision but retained the provision changing the sunset date of the credits to 2029. Passed the House in 2023, it did not move in the Senate in 2024. The credits, Caroline Bokesh, they were trying to increase from 3 million to 5 million or 5 million to 7 million, do you remember? Yeah, from 3 to 5 million. These are tax credits that community development organizations can use for donations to the community development organization that assists community development organizations in raising money. It's been here forever. It sunsetted this last year, and it's, so it has gone away. We're watching that one because it affects the community development organizations that we have in Columbia.
They would probably introduce this again.
Do we know why it stalled in the Senate?
I honestly don't.
Be curious to know as we're having conversations with our senators.
It might have something to do with the change in leadership in the finance committee. I don't know. Or we'll figure that out.
Maybe ask Quentin if he has any insight.
This is anticipated bills and topics. Workers' comp for first responder PTSD. This is an issue that has been debated in the legislature for several years because of the need to compensate people who suffer from PTSD balanced against the need to make sure that there's not an excess of payouts to someone who is a first responder and has a traumatic, and is involved in a traumatic incident. And so and I'm trying to choose my words carefully because both sides have valid points. We're self-insured as a city. If every single first responder that goes out and it sees something that's really gruesome, which is why they're the heroes that they are, is because they're the first ones on the scene. And if every single one of them, should say it that way, if you can begin to collect workers' comp and disability for things that are more common in your line of work, it would create an excess amount of liability on the part of the city, as opposed to the current standards require a higher threshold to be able to complain, to claim workers' comp for PTSD from certain traumatic events that first responders are involved in. I don't know if you guys have a lot of thoughts and opinions on this. We don't have to discuss it in detail. It's something that we watch because it can have a big impact.
You want the
fiscally.
mechanism there for those folks who have clearly severely suffered in mental, but at the same time, you want to protect the system that it doesn't become an avenue for every attorney out there to create a business model. I hate to say it that way, but it's the way I feel at this point, and so I guess the question is what's the detail on, understanding what on both sides of that? Because I think today, we know we've lacked the investment in mental health, and to be honest, I think one of our biggest requests has always come from our guys is having the ability to make sure that they can address mental health issues when needed, having a counselor or a clinician or somebody that's accessible, but long-term, I think you probably are, could be subject. I think we've seen, there's probably other folks who've seen things and been traumatized with it.
Mr. Mayor, we'll make sure we take this discussion up, in more detail at the appropriate time.
This is just some, that are on the watch list, so we just.
think we gotta
wanted to
monitor
kinda
it, for
talk
sure.
through it. Yeah, these are things on the watch list, things we anticipate are coming up, so wanted to kind of make you all aware of them. And that's why we're doing a presentation.
Short-term rentals. We put this bill on here because we watched this bill. We want to make sure that, again, that something doesn't happen in the bill that would upset what we've done as a city. I have to note that every time this bill comes into a hearing in the House, because it has not had a hearing in the Senate yet, that because of the work that you guys have done on this, the city of Columbia is noted as the example of what they would like to have cities do, as opposed to prohibiting short-term rentals in certain areas of the city, or issuing permits and putting caps on them, and having people have to disinvest from the investments they've made in their short-term rentals. So we watched this bill. It's been a House bill. It has been a debated bill for the last few years. It's not made it out of the House yet. There's been no debate on it in the Senate, but we keep it on our list because it's another thing that could have an impact on the city. Tort Claims Act changes. This is a bill that was moving, may have even passed the Senate, to be honest with you, 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And it would take the current limits for torts it would increase them for the first time since 1998. Ms. Knox probably knows those limits off the top of her head. To make sure I'm not telling you something that's not right, I would have to look at my notes to see what that increase would be. Looks like it would increase from the current 300,000 to 500,000 for a single occurrence, and from 600,000 or per person, and 600,000 to 1 million tort claim liability for local governments and state governments per occurrence. So 300 to 500 per person, 600,000 to 1
You have
million
to ask us where we stand on that.
per occurrence. There's no doubt where we stand on that. I don't know that this bill is gonna have, that this issue is gonna have the energy that it's had in the past, because some of the people who are proponents of it have moved on from being in the legislature. But we watch it, because again, this would have an effect. We watch it and then jump into action if anything's happening on it.
So the return to work provisos were something that we had some interest in from last year. You all will remember that the proviso got deleted it stayed for law enforcement, but it got deleted for other essential employees. So we have Denise here just to kind of talk a little bit about what that proviso, it's a little bit about its impact on us as a city, why we were advocating for it, and why we had people who were participating were under the proviso in the prior year before it got deleted. So Tanisha, you want to talk a little bit about the details, the things that would be advantageous for us if the proviso was reintroduced?
Right. So as Pam mentioned, currently, we had probably 13 persons who were under the proviso over the last couple of years. It helped with recruitment. It helped us to retain institutional knowledge, and it helped us retain people who had experience in the particular areas. I understand that it has been an issue with PEBA because their position is that they lose money when retirees are working versus not working. And so I took a minute to provide a scenario that I'd like to walk you through, and I'll provide that to this table.
And could you also just, 13 people where?
In various departments, specialized areas. We had one person in the street division who was a superintendent. I can provide you a list after this, but I can't remember exactly who was under. But it was about 13.
I guess at the end of the day, my question is, and I've heard arguments all over. For one, I think we ought to be able to retain good talent that want to work and engage.
Mm-hmm.
And if the retirement system is the real question here, then why is it even in play? If you retire,
Mm-hmm.
okay, then you can come back to work, but you don't get to be in the retirement system anymore. You just have your whatever you've earned to that date, and everything moving forward you should be able to move to, a Roth or whatever you want to do. Create your 401k. It's not costing the state any more money if that person retires that day and then we're not contributing. There's no.
But right now we are.
Yeah. My point is if you're working and you retire and you come back, then we wouldn't contribute anymore and you wouldn't contribute anymore. You just take your money, whatever your gross salary is or your net salary, and you invest it the way you want to invest it. It doesn't have to go in there. I mean, there's ways around this where we could keep talent. I get constantly confused at why they keep tying it to this when there's a workaround. I mean, it'd be like having a 1099 employee. What would be the difference? And having that ability, I mean, I'd love to keep, especially the city of Columbia where we've got a froth of people who are getting into retirement. It's a wealth of knowledge that we can't replace right away. And let alone in our law enforcement.
Well, law enforcement is exempt, right? Yes, so this is
Not
like,
completely.
Not completely.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. They're exempt right now because of the way it's written right now, currently. They took the section off where the non-law enforcement employees were no longer exempt from the earnings limitation.
Is that still year to year though?
So that's where, so it's only sworn officers, not non-sworn within the system, which is also a whole nother group of talented people.
Right.
So, yeah, so
Is that fire as well?
that
Higher would be, they're sworn,
sworn, but not all
but
their
not their,
support staff.
not their support.
so couldn't we just, so from what you're saying, so I've also heard arguments, and for me, as someone who's been very adamant about promoting the next generation of talent, the unintended consequence at times too is that it doesn't give younger folks an opportunity to grow in a company as well. When you have the same folks coming out of retirement, and I understand institutional knowledge is really important. So to balance that, I really like what you're suggesting, but wouldn't that just require a city policy change, that we change the way we contribute to?
No, we don't have the authority to do that.
So this would still have to be something we present where retirees can come back, but we're not gonna be contributing the same way. That's what you're suggesting.
I mean, what I'm suggesting, if you look at the example that Denise has put together for us, and thank you for doing that. I mean, if you look at it, employer contributes $15,000, let's say it's $82,000, and employee $7,000, well, that's almost $23,000. Well, why would we contribute again? If you're retired, you come in, you get your full salary, you understand that going in, but then you're not contributing either, so you're keeping more money, right? And you can invest that in your own wing, correct? Which is, the way I see it is, it's not costing the state any money to allow people to do it if they're willing to do that.
Well, the way I see it, it's not costing the state any, well, you're talking about the contribution from the
Yes,
city.
ma'am.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So to back up to the mayor's question, 1099, the third-party contractor, is that not an avenue you could go down to bring them back on board?
No.
As a
No.
third-party
No,
independent contractor?
they can't work in any
Which would be the
capacity.
workaround if they allowed us to do that.
Right, but they don't allow you to be
Right.
a 1099, because you can't do any work and receive compensation.
You can't look like an employee.
Right,
So we couldn't have them in an office with our computers and everything else.
exactly.
But if they gave us that avenue, they could stick with this, but give us the opportunity to hire somebody on a 1099, that would
That's
solve all
federal,
of it.
isn't it? Isn't that federal with the contract?
1099 is more of a
Federal.
Right, but the third-party.
But I'm just using that as an example, because you just would
Can't
contract.
work like an employee. Right.
That's all, contract employee, if that makes you feel better.
I don't know how that's different though. You still send a 1099.
Yeah, but that's the point is that what their argument is it's costing us money for you to rehire that person. I'm saying if you don't have to contribute, then it's not costing you, right?
Yeah, so their argument though, it's costing them money. So their argument is,
How?
everything you said sounds great for the city because it'll cut down on our costs. There's still the effect though of, from what I have been told, I have not read this anywhere, but is the number of people who would take advantage of that once it passes, it would be a large, big sum of cash coming out of the system in the front end. So that is what hurts the system.
Yeah, but I guess the issue is the people we're talking to about are already retiring, so they're having to pay it out anyway.
So there's still a caution for people to actually take advantage of, or at least it was last year, because it was on an annual proviso. It was just year by year. It hasn't been put in effect. If they put it in effect and then everyone does it, even if they change state law, it doesn't matter. All those people that took advantage of it will still continue to have it, even if they end that program. So we still have some employees, probably from 2012 potentially, that are still getting paid both state money,
Yeah.
state retirement money, and from the cities if they took advantage before the change.
Before 2013.
Can you explain something in scenario one?
Yeah.
Or you can continue and I may get the answer if you want to.
Well, I think the mayor went through the first scenario, but I will go through. So if an employee makes $82,700, $701, the employer, the city would contribute the $15,349 on his behalf. The employee would contribute $7,443 on his behalf, making a total of $22,792 contributed to PIBA on this employee's behalf. So this is the employee who is working,
Right.
okay? If I am not working,
Hold on, but so at the bottom, so the retirement of that employee, even though they're making, I'm confused at this last sentence. If
the very last therefore,
If the same employee's retirement income is $40,000 annually,
and he is not working, then PIBA would be paying that employee $40,000. In other words, PIBA keeps more of its money. It nets more of its money with an employee who is retired and working. Because instead of giving them the whole $40,000 that they'd be making not working, they're paying a net $17,000.
gotcha, okay.
Because they're paying
They're
into it.
making some contributions.
Right. So while it doesn't equal, PIBA is in a better solvent state with the worker working, with the retiree working.
But with people having the opportunity to retire and go work in the private sector, making more money, they're still at the same juncture. They're having to pay out. They're not having anybody paying in. So that's where I'm like, I can show it both ways. So, why not figure a medium that allows people to continue to work? They're gonna get their money one way or another, right?
So what, for the 13 employees, what did you all advocate for? That's unclear to me right now. You said that you guys had done some advocacy work around keeping the,
No, we didn't advocate. These were employees that were kept when the proviso went into effect.
Okay.
A couple years ago. There
Okay.
was no advocacy whatsoever.
okay, I could have sworn that we just earlier said this, that you are working on advocating for something around this exemption currently.
Well, I would love, as the HR director, to be able to say to our employees that we can, or have the ability to keep those people in specialized positions when necessary, regardless of their retiree status.
Okay.
I think it's important also for the committee to be reminded, this is to the lobbyists, the proviso as it was over the last several years was in the context of COVID. So the way that the governor would, and he was just getting recommendations as with everything, but I think it was based upon, at the time, over the last several years, the workforce changes and COVID change, things being impacted due to COVID. And so they captured this, ability for folks to come back and work without the earnings limitation as an incentive to assist during that period of time. And every year annually, he just continued to do it until this past year. And when we realized it at the very end, that this part of this proviso that did away with everything COVID related also impacted this ability for these type employees to return to work without the earnings limitation. And so what we were originally trying to do, Dr. Bustles, at the very end when we realized it, was to get the lobbyists to see if they would take out just this component and not have it tied to any of the other COVID provisos, and I'll let them speak to this because I may be saying it wrong. And I think at the end, when they realized that this was something of importance to us, it really just was not any time left. It literally was at the very end when provisos were being approved or discussed. We talked to some of our legislators who typically can help us out with things, but they too advised it was really too far gone.
You're correct, Ms. Wilson. Also, this proviso the year before, they were gonna do away with all COVID-related provisos. I think the General Assembly said, we'll keep it on for one more year. And so that was the promise that was kind of made, negotiated. And so last year was that 1 year. And so we went to our delegation members and tried to get them to at least help us on this. It was like too late. It probably would have done more damage than anything.
So now it's coming back up? Or you anticipate it will come back up?
It's not.
Or they'll
There's
just let the
nobody-
proviso lapse, or whatever the right word is?
They've taken that proviso out of the budget. And right now, we don't anticipate that that the House or the Senate is gonna put it back in unless something changes.
Okay.
Now, the only other option, well, not only option, but I still say that maybe, in this, y'all's decision, we do at least try to get a meeting with people, because that's probably gonna be the agency that everybody looks to explain all of this. Even though we have our scenarios, it may be worth us just going and meeting with them.
And there may be a middle ground to propose
Yeah.
that would meet everyone's interests.
Increase the earnings.
There may be a middle ground. But again, like Ms. Wilson said, we had some interest in that last year, and that's why it was on our list for interest in it for the next term, and trying to find some compromise, maybe a people meeting is what we need to do.
Well, and Mayor, I think you touched on it. This is not a COVID issue for the city of Columbia. This is a talent retention issue for the city of Columbia.
Well, and I think Denise said it best, having the ability to hold on to specialized positions when necessary and not having a tool to do it puts us in a situation. And sworn officers and sworn firefighters are one, obviously, but the non-sworn are just as important for the function of these agencies to deliver the quality of service and the protection around public safety. And then you add in, potentially other first responders. To me, that we have a lot of different offices that are first responders. Well, if we're losing that specialty and we don't have the ability to retain it, that creates a problem. So we need a mechanism to do it, I think, when it comes. I think that was a great way to explain that. Absolutely.
And there are
fantastic.
other groups of
Municipalities
people who are exempt, like teachers, who teach in special, in certain areas, or who teach special, different subjects that are critical subjects. So, yeah, I think it would be worthy.
What do you think the path that those education associations took to PIVA to change that?
We didn't pass it.
Do you know?
Is that passed?
Don't know,
You don't know?
but I can guess that it was all because of the teacher shortage.
Right. That would be my guess as well, that they were looking at occupy, because they had healthcare workers as well at one time, but they've changed that and just maintained the teachers.
I'm more interested in non-sworn.
And then thank you, Denise. Then the other proviso, the 108.17, currently, if you're 57 and older, you don't have to stay out a year in order to be exempt from the earnest limitation. But if you're under 57, it's kind of an issue for us, because you have to have a 12-month break in service. And you're not a law enforcement officer, and so then you have the potential of losing your law enforcement credentials, and you're unable to perform your duties as an officer. So if we had the ability to have people who were under 57 not be tied to that exemption, then that would be a good thing that we would like to advocate for, because we could get back those, and I'll let Chief speak to that. Those officers that retire early, now they gotta take a whole year off before they can come back to service. But if you're over 57, you don't have to do that. So this proviso would allow people who are under 57 and retire to not have that year's break that they have to have before they can come back without an earnings limitation. Did I get that right, Chief? Okay. So that's something that will help us retain law enforcement.
So are we saying no break, is that what we're pushing for?
Or just a standard
30 days.
separation.
Because the ones over 57 only have to do a 30-day break. If you're under 57, you have to do a whole year's break. So that would allow us to, hire officers from other jurisdictions. If they retired from there, they could come to work for us with a 30-day break if they were under 57. So that would be good for us for recruitment and retention for sure. Chief, you want to add anything to that?
One year they got the 57.
Yeah, that's such a random age, yeah.
I don't know where they got that from.
I think
They just assume those people start at 21 or 22.
That's still 30.
Yeah, that's still not the age. I did the math on that too. That still doesn't match. That doesn't end up with
Doesn't match the
57.
25 or the 28.
Right.
Ms. Javis, if she's still here, maybe it was 57, one of the ages that they use to calculate retirement benefits, where they say 28 years and over the age of 57, or 30 years and over the age of 57, et cetera, et cetera.
Tell me what people, whether or not that's the age people uses?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I'm
so
not sure.
may or may not be.
Because there's a 55 and, well, there used to be a 55 and 25
Right.
There you
for
go.
early
That's what I was
retirement,
thinking of.
but it's not 57, it's 55.
55.
And they don't do it now. Now it's a rule of 90, so
Yeah.
they don't even use that anymore.
Age and years of service.
Yes.
Yeah, it's to equal 90. So some other topics, Kyle,
Okay.
we had on there, topics of interest.
These are issues that Mayor, you and council have brought up to us to continue to advocate for and to look for any kind of solutions that would help the city of Columbia.
Well, I mean, to be quite honest, I think come November, we'll know if we've got a leverage point or not. Should the penny pass again, I think that puts us in a very good discussion point to sit down with the state and say, we're gonna have money coming in for the next 25 years that we want to partner with you guys, and to really improve the quality of our infrastructure, our roads, beautification, and litter control. Because, this is the capital city, it is the capital region, and we, 9 gateways coming through, but with 72% of the roadways owned by the state in our community, look, we're not asking them to go it alone, we wanna come, and I think, so once we see what happens in November, I think we need to sit down and come up with a strategy and really approach them with, hey, there's an opportunity here for us to address these issues finally, and if we can look, it'll take us 20 years to pave all those roads, and build the infrastructure back anyway, but then that buys us another 20 years worth of road, but it also allow us to take advantage of the smart surfaces and other things to improve the quality of life all the way around, so this could be a great solution for both the state and the city in addressing this issue.
If there is a way to increase some departments' budget for beautification and litter control, I think that'd be a great thing to do statewide. Whether it's Department of Corrections, some third-party contractor that DOT has, they have a certified, approved contractors list already, but I think it's a funding function, you know.
I think say it
2050.
directly, even better, so Bagnell Fence is one of them that we see on the highway. They're cutting grass, cleaning trash, maintaining the fence. Well, if they've already got the contract, then go ahead and extend it. Last time I checked, US 1 is Gervais Street, 378, all these are highways, so extend that to take care of those arteries as well. So maybe that's
Yeah,
the
and I
approach.
think our staff has what that number would look like. If y'all wanna share that with them just for our municipality, think about it. Statewide, what impact that would have would be great.
Good.
I don't think there's anybody that wouldn't support beautification and litter control across our state. And, if they've got excess resources and.
Where's Lou Holtz when you need him, man?
I remember that.
In Florida.
It's true.
So the
We have
next,
Miss Elliott. Let's
So the
take her
next
to the
one-
State House with us.
Let me ask you guys just a question, because there's a bill that was up last year. And, I know that we expressed our support for increasing some of the litter. We weighed in on increasing litter funds.
why didn't it pass?
Well, it didn't pass because Palmetto Pride had a number of concerns with the bill. Would you guys be interested in hearing from Palmetto Pride at a council meeting to talk about
Absolutely.
this issue? And
Yeah.
have them come in and talk about strategies and ways to partner? I think that might be productive, to help the conversation forward. And they may actually have some, there may be some things that we could be doing that we're not doing, that we didn't know that they offered resources for. But it sparked a long discussion with Palmetto Pride folks after that hearing. And then that was in the House and
That's interesting. I never heard from one of them.
Yeah, I never heard for,
Well,
yeah.
we're not, I don't think there's any interest in growing a volunteer base for litter pickup at a strung out frequency.
Yeah, I think
I
for
think
me,
that's a
it's
lot of
behavior
what they do.
change, and when you look at other states and some of their practices for what they fine you for littering and dumping, I mean, there has to be some kind of correlation because you see a lot less litter. And I know this is the next agenda item, and we can probably cover it now. My thing is, I don't think that we can do our job as a local government to hold people accountable for littering when the fine is just $500 or $250. I'd like to see add a zero on that. Make, I think Maryland has it as $1,500. And so,
Substantial tickets like that would curb
and
that.
even a couple of tickets will start sending the message that like, oh, we're not playing. You can't just dump your trash. But I agree with Councilman Brennan. I think it's wonderful that we have a lot of constituent groups and organizations that want to help. But it's not enough. And we need to change individual behavior, and that comes from accountability for your actions.
Is our issue as focused on people throwing a bag of fast food out the window, or is it more focused on people who dump on vacant lots in the city?
Well,
It's both.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing a tremendous amount of people going into different neighborhoods and dumping. And one of the challenges too is with the donut holders, some of this is happening in well, the county doesn't have any other tools either. So they need it just as much as we do in a community to eliminate dumping. And one of the things I've asked a city attorney to look into is the evictions as well. Because right now, we treat them like a homeowner, that they can dump everything on the street and we'll pick it up. But that's a business, that's not a homeowner. They're running a business, so why should we be responsible for, and if you look at it, it happens more often than you think. And, I mean, it trashes and it sits out there for a while to the point where, I think we've got to enhance, some regulations on our side to improve things, but we also need to have the ability to find people at a rate that'll eliminate it, because some people are willing to take that gamble for a $200 ticket. or
And I mean,
$500
I'll use the case study of before Sunset Drive was shut down. There are many volunteer groups, Richland County Focus, City of Columbia. I mean, Councilwoman Herbert even did a cleanup there. Within 2 days, it's trashed every single time. So how long are we gonna continue to do something that's not working? And it's because people know they can get away with it. So like, I'd like to also, should this pass, and it sounded like, I spoke with Senator Jackson on this and he was very amenable to helping. So he might be a potential path, but I would also like to look at technology and what other states are doing to actually enforce this law, to start sending the message as well.
Dr. Bostos, did you want to go ahead and talk about
Yeah.
what's in here since we're on this topic?
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I think we covered most of it. I just wanted to raise and understand why there hadn't been movement. I do think that, I'd like to hear from the Palmetto Pride, but I would also like for us to move forward with our efforts to continue to push forward and increase fine.
And I think that finding something that would allow us to address the issues, the specific issues that we have that wouldn't offend the sort of statewide regime that Palmetto Pride guards and protects would be that's the territory, the terrain we need to look at trying to find.
But I guess I just really need to understand what their
Yeah, I'm not understanding like what that regime is.
And I don't want to speak for them, which is why I'd rather have them come here, but it has something to do with when the tickets were $750, there was a lot of hesitancy on the part of law enforcement officers to write tickets to people. When we dropped the ticket prices to much more like $50 a piece, then we're writing now like twice as many tickets or more, because the officers don't hesitate to give someone a ticket for $50 where they do for $750.
Yeah,
I'm not
I would
sure
like to see that data too.
that's actually
Again,
happening.
It's very dangerous for me to even say two sentences on their behalf, which is
Well,
why I'd
I
rather
just
them
think
come
the
here and talk.
definitions around it, I mean, if you look at the base fines, and I think that's the point, is so you're gonna give a base fine to somebody for littering of $50? And last time I checked, half the state, if not more, had suspended community cleanup, so none of that's been happening anyway. We're out of COVID now, we wanna bring it back, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I'd love to hear from them because we ought to be aligned, not apart on this issue.
And I think I don't know, I'm not speaking on their behalf, but Palmetto Pride kind of started out addressing litter on highways. So it wasn't really city or county specific, other than the roadways.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
then also technically more than half our roads are highways technically within the city, right? So,
Where are they housed, under DOT? Or are they just a separate entity?
We just pulled up. It's a separate
I thought
area.
they were a separate entity. A nonprofit, yeah.
I mean, it's a $25 fine for less than 15 pounds. That's, yeah.
Look, it's embarrassing to have people come into town and see the litter that we have, and somehow we gotta have the tools to make it painful and.
I'd be curious to see where their board lives, if they live in Columbia, to drive in these gateways and just see how bad it is. It's disappointing.
That's the end of the list that we have prepared with the very able staff that's helped us and given feedback and input. And so if there are other issues that you guys have on your mind, we'd love to hear those.
So this is a start and a watch list. Of course, we're wanting other council members, other staff, as the session goes on, to be bringing to our attention, myself, Juana, Ms. Wilson's interest in other bills and other legislation as it comes forward, and the rest of council, if you guys see anything. These were some that were holdovers from last year, or things that were expressed to watch and to continue to look at. But we know that it's not it's not a done deal. So we're asking for any feedback going forward.
Once November happens and you know what changes have happened at the State House, we know what's happened with the penny and all of that. think we need to regroup and be able to start things because, we're gonna be on a 2-year cycle from an election standpoint, so
Right.
this will be an opportunity maybe to push some things forward. But there also could be some very significant changes coming as well. So I think we really wanna have a lot more input about what's going on at the State House, a lot more eyes on what's happening, because I do think it's gonna be a very active session.
Well, I think it will be as well.
So I know you have an interest in this committee meeting more often. And so we certainly will work with Erica to schedule those and then have updates more often during the legislative session.
Yeah, I do, just from a procedural standpoint, I do think that once you all, as a committee, have endorsed these items to be your watch list, or you're suggesting perhaps that they be, I know that, as with any legislative session, obviously, and as you all continue to meet, once the session starts, there'll be updates and changes, but in general terms, we typically would have an agenda that the full council needs to be brought up to speed on before, well in advance of the legislative session, just to make sure that your recommendations coming out of committee are shared with the full council. So I'm not sure if you all are anticipating referring this out. I do advise that that first item with Ms. Shand certainly go into executive session for full council under legal advice. Just some of the things I was hearing, I think you probably need to do that so that they're aware. And then she mentioned something about, unless I wasn't hearing her correctly, some type of partnership. Is that a contract situation that she's suggesting, or I'm not sure I'm following that part, but obviously all members of council haven't been briefed.
Correct, and I think we briefed them, but, I mean, is your I'd go ahead and schedule that we could brief that, so if there's any legal questions or contractual stuff we need to consider, beyond contributing to existing contracts or whatever, obviously do that, but I think for us to have a finalized that everybody can we really have to wait till November.
You mean in terms of what things that we talked about here?
Like the agenda?
I mean, for a final, I think we say, hey, as of today, this is what we
Wanna
believe
refer out.
it could change
Okay.
in November, we may have to update council, is my point.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure, even if you're suggesting that these bills and laws that you covered today and the other issues you covered are going to be a part of the watch list or priority list, so to speak, that you refer it out to full council so that they can begin to get
That's the
themselves up to
plan.
speed on the items as well, even in advance of November.
Oh, yes,
I think
ma'am.
as you get more information, then we'll tighten it up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be our report, to council, is to refer it out.
We just,
With the
took this
caveat.
information only, send it out to
Yeah.
the rest of council.
And then just,
And we'll get the first item on automated, traffic safety cameras.
An
I'm not sure
executive
what,
session.
I didn't
October,
get the exact name correct, but we will refer that or suggest that we put that on executive session for not today, but the next opportunity.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
and as we go, this will give us a good starting point, which is very helpful. As we go through the session, there will be 2 pre-files for the House and 2 pre-files for the Senate in November, December. We review all those bills. We pull out the ones that might be of concern to cities, probably 1,000 bills in the House, 1,000 bills in the Senate by the end of September, pre-files the end of September. We pull them all out, we pull the ones out that might be of concern to the city and circulate those among city staff. Damon and Caroline and I look at those, we look at what the municipal associations fall in, what the county associations fall in, so that we can see sort of what's out there and what's happening. And so my point is, this is a starting point, and then it can be organic as we go through the session.
And then we'll meet with the committee for more frequent updates as
Yes.
those things are coming
But
out.
also if there's like something breaking, right, because things move quickly, I don't want to have to worry about making sure it was forwarded to us. Can you please just strengthen our feedback loop and communicate with us directly and let us know? Like if there's something that we need to be at, or if there's something that's going to directly affect the city, like I don't want to wait for a report to city staff that then gets, like, just let us know. I think this committee is pretty involved, so.
Good.
And I think once the session starts, I mean, it's not really about the committee, it's really about council as a whole, knowing what's happening, because we all have different relationships, so that we can network together. Just the one thing we do have to do as a council and a city is deliver the message the same way. And so it's very important, you know, there's a lot of tendencies for people to put stuff on our ticket, and we don't need it on our ticket. We need to make sure we are controlling our messaging.
So Dr. Russell, did you want to?
We covered it.
We covered it?
Yeah.
You covered the ordinances too, like city ordinances?
Yeah, I was more concerned about what we can do to move the needle on the state ordinance, because I think any changes we made to our city ordinance would be followed by that increase, so. Thank you.
That's all we had on our
Thank you.
agenda for this meeting.
Madam Clerk, we're gonna end the meeting.